evening, and welcome to Bermuda's News and Views. I'm your host, Don Burgess, and with me tonight, we're going to have a discussion on West End School, West End Primary, and why should it be saved. And our guests tonight are Larry Hunt. Welcome.
Thank you, there. Good evening.
Good evening. Cecille Simmons. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me.
And someone who's familiar with most people who've been on the show a few times, Ellen Kate Horton. Welcome.
Thank you, Don, and thanks for having us.
Now, Ellen Kate, can you, because this all deals with the reorganization of primary schools and the closure of some schools, can you explain what your group is and why was it formed?
Okay. We were formed, we're alumni of West End, first of all. We have something, all of us have something very special to do with West End. Some of us went there. Many of our group did go, many had family members who went there. We've sent our children there. Our grandchildren go there. I don't have grandchildren, but somebody has grandchildren who went there. At any rate, it's of grave concern to us that of the two schools in Somerset we choose to close, West End is the school. West End has a serious legacy with us, and its history is something that should not be ignored. We are 152 years old and growing. And hopefully we look at the legacy and those of us who are here now and understand that this is worth our journey to hopefully have West End remain. I just would like to say right now, it's a difficult time in education because with the COVID situation right now,
And looks like she's paused. So while we're waiting for Ellen Kate to come back, Larry, why don't you tell us what your connection to West End is?
Yeah, my children went to West End School almost 50 years ago now, but I was always a favorite of West End School. I officiated in most of the sports for the last 45, 50 years. So that was a great connection with us. My children went to Howard. They graduated from Howard. My granddaughter went to West End, and she also graduated from Humboldt College in Canada. So, my wife and I served on the PTA for several years, and it was just been up my heart.
Right, those roots are really deep for you. A
Yeah.
lot of different connections there. Cecily, what's your connection to West End?
Well, my father was the principal for 33 years. And although he's been dead for 43 years, he left behind diaries and newspaper clippings of the history of the school and the trials. Now, he did write diaries, in the 30s, but I went one day and he was burning them. He was destroying them because he said the pain that the Black people in Somerset went through to get an education. He couldn't bear reading it again, but he left the clippings and he left other details. And so that's why I know the struggle of the West End School. 152 years compared to the school that's been chosen is quite a shock. West End sits right in the middle of the community. I take my granddaughter to school there, and it's beautiful to see. The bus pulls up at Sands, the children get off, the older siblings drop the younger ones, they take on the school field at West End, and then they go off to Sands. The same thing is repeated in the afternoon. So my concern is that you're closing this school, but the children now, they have to walk a long distance. I know we want them to have exercise, but with the traffic, it's dangerous. That is I have many concerns, but West End is rooted in the community. Before the pandemic, when you went to the Christmas play, who did you see? All the people who don't even have children at West End anymore. They are there because they are welcome and it's part of the community. So what the government is doing is disrupting a community. You know, if you look at the population, and Mr. Hunt and Mrs. Horton, Ms. Horton can tell you, the number of houses in the area of West End far exceeds the remote housing facilities at the Somerset Primary. So I am really concerned. In fact, I'm offended by what they're doing because no one asked before they made this decision. No one took the trouble
Exactly.
to see how people in Somerset felt. They just take it or leave it. Well, we are not taking it. I'm telling you, we are not taking it.
Before we get into some of the issues that your group has, including the catchment area between the two schools, maybe you can help tell some of the stories that, or at least one of the stories that your father had told you, with some of the things that West End had to endure during the darker racial times.
Well, one of them was um, he would order desks, and the desks were sent to Somerset Primary, and the Somerset Primary desks were sent to us, including their old discarded books. Well, you wanted desks, you got them. You wanted books, you got, and be satisfied. That was troubling. When the cry came to increase the size of the school, they wanted to know, they're going to build an assembly hall, but make sure it has space for a classroom. Or, okay, make the classroom so that we can put the children there. That's good enough for them. Now, I just want I probably go off track a little bit. Now, remember, West End School was the catchment school for the Portuguese community originally. So Black children and Portuguese in Somerset went to West End. Now, when the numbers of Somerset Primary fell, suddenly we had to move some children. Well, let's move the Portuguese children there. This caused a division right there and then. Then what they did, the school was housed mainly by the children from the American bases and the Canadian bases. Now, the American bases had Black children, but they couldn't go to Somerset Primary. They were sent to West End. So, we remember this, and maybe the young people don't, but it's important for us to remind them that for 152 years, Black people in Somerset fought and struggled to keep a school going with hand-me-down things, and that's good enough for you. But out of that, we have created some really, really honorable people in the parish. So West End children, they don't have to look at magazines and see people that they want to emulate. They came right out of West End School, and the children know it. So I don't know how the minister says, let's write a book about it. Well, I don't write obituaries. West End is still alive. It's like asking me to write an obituary for my friend who hasn't died yet. And I'm offended by that. Now, you can tell I like to talk. So,
Yeah, you said you were going to be shy to begin with. Now, Ellen Kate, do you want to add anything to what the history and legacy of West End means?
Well, of course. Certainly for us, my entire family, my uncles and aunts, cousins, with the exception of a few, all went to West End School. And so it's the history of our school. My daughter went there, even though we were living abroad, and the majority of our education was abroad whenever we were home. And I was studying at the time. So my school finished mid-April, and mid-April through June, my daughter was at West End. So it means everything to this community. I think when we look at my grandparents, my grandfather, who was one of the presidents of Somerset Cricket Club, you will know that most of those presidents are out of West End schools. Most of our captains are out of West End school. So you've got to think, where would Emancipation Day be that we all celebrate? Where would Mel Prince Day be? When we think of Cupmatch, were it not for the legacy of West End School.
I want to highlight Terry Lee Smith's comment. She said, "It amazes me that an area that has 4 government seats, has almost always been 100% PLP, is being treated in such a manner. Many thanks and appreciation for your votes, Sans voters." What has been your response from the MPs in the area? Well, Ms. Simmons, you'll
One
have,
of
you'll have
us,
to give a disclaimer.
can I say that one of us in Parliament, remote Parliament, asked us to stop whining and protesting for a school. So that's what that one thinks of us.
And
There's no,
we do have
there's,
one Sands Parish MP who supported us in a big way. That would be Jamal Simmons, MP Simmons. We did write to all MPs. We've had a lot of correspondence out there. MP Crystal Caesar did respond. She's an alumnus of West End. But these were just, we didn't get any answers to our questions. We just got a couple to say, we did receive your questionnaire.
yeah, I know we got a response from one OBA member, which is Marcus Jones, when he came to the meeting, which
Yes.
was positive. Nothing from Kenny Wilson and nothing hardly from Kathy Simmons. We got to think seriously about using people from our area, Somerset area, to be our MPs, because these people are not representing us very well at all. And just that's the bottom line.
Can I just add in here a minute? Of course, Jamal Simmons is my son, but so I better say that first. But you know, in the past, we had 4 representatives in Somerset. We had Walter Lister, we had Walter Roberts, Eugene Cox, Lionel Simmons. I know those 4 would not have allowed this to take place. And that is our concern now for people who don't understand the parish. They're in the parish, but do they really understand their constituents? And this makes me feel that they don't.
Now, I know, sorry, just to move on to one of the points as to why they selected Somerset primary over West End. One of the data points was that Somerset primary, as the parish school, it's bigger. And how do the 2 schools compare in size, and what's your beef with that comparison?
They are actually almost identical in size. Somerset West End has more building than Somerset Primary, a lot more building, probably almost twice the size building wise. West End has 2 school fields, good sized ones. So I really do not understand that comment. West End could right now house every child in Sands. Now, Somerset Primary cannot. One of the things they are saying is that there's a preschool over there, but actually, take away the preschool for a moment, the property it sits on, the property that the Somerset Primary sits on is about 0.1 something of an acre larger than West End. Hardly enough to make a fuss about. And certainly 4 schools that have been, 2 schools that have been chosen have less property than West End has, and they do not have preschools. So that to me is a non-argument. Also, 4 of the schools chosen have a lower score than West End. And you know, if we look at the score,
Ellen,
it's
I can just
very interesting. I'm sorry.
We actually have a graphic of the schools, the opening and close. So maybe we'll bring that up, and then you can point out which of the schools you're talking about here.
Okay, those are the ones that still. Well, Francis Patton and Harrington Sound are both small, have less property than West End. Those 2 have less property. Those 2, I believe it. there are four of them who scored less than West End. Uh, I know one was Harrington Sound. I believe one was, and I'm going from memory right now, Paget Primary. Uh, I'm pretty sure Harrington Sound was one. There are four schools that are chosen that
Okay.
have scored less than West End. I will find those schools in a moment, but
Okay,
so,
we'll put a temporary asterisk next to it.
yes.
But so it seems like the preschool might be the difference maker between the two schools, or part of the difference. Um,
Well, however, the other schools don't have preschools attached. The ones I've talked about that are smaller, they don't have preschool. So they've got to build them. So if we're talking about equity throughout the system, if you can build at Harrington Sound the state-of-the-art school and the preschool, you can more than adequately do that at West End. But one of our interesting points is that West End enjoys a lovely relationship with the middle school, which is going to be around for a while. And I'm guessing it's going to be the secondary school in Somerset. So you would have those siblings right next to one another. And I would like to say, as a responsible parent, I certainly would not leave my elementary school child, my young elementary school child, in care of my preschool child. So, I would have to take care of my preschool child, but my bigger child would take care of my elementary school child.
I'm gonna open this up to all four or all three of you. One of the points the group is arguing for in favor of West End, and you just mentioned it, Sands Secondary Middle School, which will probably be Sands Secondary again, is the availability of community services that are around West End compared to Somerset. So what would some of those things be?
Well, just said the barber shop is across the street. And then there's Bailey's where they get some of their uniforms and things. That's across the street. Then there's Baxter's. That's a real treat. They're allowed to go over to Baxter's. There's the cricket club that has the youth activities. There's Beulah Church just up the road from it. But can I just say one thing here? I am wondering, why is Victor Scott, they said West End is not fit for purpose. Why is Victor Scott fit for purpose? Victor Scott was built in 1926. West End was built in 1944. Now, Victor Scott was built in sections and it was completed in 1931. Why is that fit for purpose? Harrington Sound School is being kept. That was built by Mr. Byron in 1945. I've studied these schools and their history, and I know. So why is West End not fit for purpose? But the minister says, well, but that's not the only criteria. So that's all I have to say on that issue. But compare 1926 with 1944. That really needs some explanation.
And all those business are within 100-yard radius from West End School. Baxter's, I think they rely on West End School for making money. Bailey's, they provide clothes for school uniforms for the school, and you just go across the street to Mine and Taco and get a haircut. So I mean, is the government going to supplement these businesses if that school moves out of that area? Because I know Baxter's were hard on that. They would be quite upset as well.
Yeah. Larry, most people know you as a great sportsman throughout Bermuda, playing a multitude of sports. How important is it having the cricket club facility and the youth program so close to West End?
Well, most of we start at our program starts at under threes, and most of those kids either come from the nursery, they go to West End School. We have kids that go to both schools, but most of them come from West End, and they are supplying the lifeline for some of the cricket club. So it's only a stone throw just on the street, another 100 yards away. So it's very important that we keep that club-school relationship going. And like I said, some department have the same sort of relationship with the club, but West End has always been that main hub.
Ellen Kate, not to slight you, but obviously your grand history with the Big Blue Machine and being involved in sports, and of course your daughter as well. But again, having the sporting facilities available just so close, how much of an influence do you think that can help our young people?
Oh, a huge influence. I can think of, my brother's first teaching appointment, my brother Randy, his first teaching appointment was at West End. He actually taught Clyde Best. That's amusing. But anyway, during his time teaching at West End, games started at 3:15. We had Thursday games and they started at 3:15. Somerset Colts would start their game at 3:15, short one person. And at 3:30, Randy would dash out of school and run down to Somerset Cricket Club and on the field. So, hey, and many of his students followed. You think Clyde was down there. All of those guys came out of West End School, but then they had no choice. They had no choice.
No, Cecily, earlier you were talking about the catchment area between the two schools. Does the two groups your group want to explain, what that means as far as catchment area?
Well,
Sure, Larry.
let's say what you
Larry,
see
you
in the
want to do
morning.
that?
Oh, Larry, you want to do
What's the
that?
question?
Larry lives on the school route too. He sees the route of the children.
No, what was the question?
What's the catchment area difference between the two schools, between West End and Somerset?
The catchment area?
Yeah.
Well,
If you
I
take
mean,
those two graphs, Larry.
yeah, but I know for West End, 90% of those kids can walk to school, whereas in some departments, it's probably maybe 40%. They just have to be bussed in.
And they have to get on the bus.
So
And the bus stop is not
the bus
outside.
stop is in the main road outside the gas station, so they've got to walk another 300 yards to get to the school. So I think that's a big difference.
I think also in the area of West End School, we showed you a graph, Don. I think you have that information where there's a graph, and we took about 300 feet around both schools, and a huge difference with the catchment area. Many more houses in the vicinity of West End School. So, it assists with the carbon footprint. And as we are having our global crisis, we need to consider that. Also there's an issue with the water tables as we look at what is going on. And I think Larry could probably help you with that.
Yeah, in 2009, there was a report after Fabian. And interesting enough, in that report, Daniels Head and Somerset Primary were in that report at high risk of flooding. Now, that was like 13 years ago. So since then, the tides are rising higher and higher. We have some tremendous bad storms. So those areas are going to be very much in due time. They're going to be underwater. Long Bay Lane with Fabian, you couldn't drive down to Cambridge Road because it was flooded with water. It's no such problem that we could have in a West End school. So that's one thing, would you build a $5 million school or house on that kind of property when you know there could be some flooding in the next 5 years? Nobody's sensible enough would do that. So that's a strong point that we have on that as far as the climate change is concerned. Yeah. The water comes right up to the main road from
Mhm.
Cambridge Road and Vivian. Unbelievable. So,
Yeah.
and you know, look, Somerset Primary is about 300 yards from Daniel's Head. The nursery that comes right off the road will get the water first, and then the water will receive down to the school. And the nursery is a higher risk than the school at this present moment. So I just would not invest people's money in building a school where in the next decade or less could be underwater.
Now, Ellen Kate, you were talking about carbon footprint. What did you mean by
Yeah.
that?
Well, we don't need children who are living that close to school to be driven. So we don't have cars on the road for all of those children. So the vast majority of the children can walk into West End. And one of the things that I will say, as a student, as a former student of West End, you know, we came out of Cooks Hill, Scotts Hill, Soundview. Everybody walked. Now, mind you, those days, parents didn't have a whole lot of cars. But today, we can trust our little people to walk to school. So that's what I'm talking about. Less of a need for traffic on the road, less of a need for cars on the road. And the other thing worth mentioning is the fact that the bus can drop you off right at West End School. There is no bus that can get through to Somerset Primary. And one of the things that I found very interesting with the decisions made by the person, the experts, they called them, I think they called them 6 experts, when they were talking about scoring of the schools, and saying that West End ended up with 4 of the 5 or 3 of the 4 categories, something to that effect. In fact, when you look at the categories, even when they talked about the age of Somerset Primary, it was not the correct age. Somerset Primary was there when I was a child. So the claim that Somerset Primary was built so much later is actually wrong. And
Sam's
that is
grandma.
the information that was given. And Cecily, I'm sure you can remember walking across when we couldn't walk on the field.
Mhm. Or sit
We
on
were
the wall.
forced to
Don't forget
walk,
that. Couldn't sit on the wall.
couldn't sit on the wall, couldn't sit on the field, couldn't walk on the field, had to walk around, had to endure the name calling. And
Ellen
you
Kate,
know,
explain why we were trying to take a shortcut across the field
okay,
because we had a.
we
I'll leave that to you.
okay, we actually went to cooking class. Imagine. I often wonder why they sent us to cooking class. But we went to cooking class at West End School. And sometimes my mind tells me maybe they had another job in mind for you. But anyway, the government of the day arranged for us to go to cooking class at Somerset Primary. Mrs. Gill was the
Hmm.
person
That's
who
right. That's
was
correct.
the teacher there. And we left West End to go over to what is now the preschool to cooking class. And we would think the easiest route is to walk straight across the field. But no, stay in the road. You might dirty our feet. So we had to walk all the way around in order to get to cooking class. And when we left, when we cleaned up and when we left, we had to walk all the way around to get back. And I'm telling you, the entire walk, we could hear the name calling. It was not a good time. And in a time when a place like Barbados is getting rid of Lord Nelson's statue, um, Columbus statues, Christopher Columbus statues have been pulled down in the United States. The Confederate flag is coming down. Any any of the vestiges of racism that we've endured should be done away with. And so Somerset Primary was one of those places. And it has it has not served our community well. It only some 50 years ago were we allowed to step on the property. And I think that this could be one of our forms of reparation to the people of Somerset to keep the one school that our forefathers built. And imagine, so soon after slavery ended, we had the mind to build a school so that Black children could be educated. Without West End School, I would dare say not one of my family members would have been educated. And I not only talk about my immediate brothers and sisters, I mean those above me. Nobody would have been educated until well below me because we were not allowed to go into those schools. And when we had problems, I can remember them sometimes calling our fathers who were carpenters, who were masons, who might have left West End School and done a trade. And that's how they became who they were. They would come to our school and fix it because the government of the day wouldn't. And now when we do this uh, synopsis, when we have these experts looking at the buildings and things like that, what would you expect? That's exactly what I would expect. That our buildings would not be in fantastic shape because they haven't been taken care of by the governments of the day. We have been neglected. And we know that that's the story of most of our places. However, despite that, we have marched on, we have done well, and we remain to fight and to stand up, hopefully, for West End School. Because I feel very strongly that if another government had done just this, we'd all be in the streets, including the government.
The couple comments with regard to your statement about symbols of racism, statues and flags coming down. Jennifer Allboy says Sans Grammar, aka White School. That was a nickname.
Yes, that was the nickname.
That's right.
That's what
And the
all
older
of
people
us,
said
we
they didn't even
knew
know it
was
had
white
another
school.
name.
Sands Grammar School.
Yeah.
But do you
It
know,
just, it,
in 1985, I think it was William Cox was the Minister for Education. He came to West End School one evening and he said, now we're going to make West End one form entry. There are too
yeah,
many children here. And so the rest of the children will have to go to Sands Primary. It's a much better facility. The children will be far more comfortable. Well, I tell you, there was an uproar in that meeting that night. And one young woman stood, and I'll never forget her. She said, how dare you? I was among the first to go to Sands Primary. Be, they made fun of me because I was dark. They made fun of my lips. They made fun of my hair. And she said the saddest part about it is that no one came to my defense. My children will not be going there. And I'll tell you, she said, I do my best to avoid passing it. The pain is so extreme. I became a bedwetter. I was dysfunctional. I had nowhere to turn. West End was full. They couldn't take me. And they let me know, you're just lucky that you're here because we don't want you here.
yes.
This
Well,
woman, I would say, is probably 50 now. She's about 50. And she's not the only one. At the town hall meeting, we had a young man explain how he felt about going there and how happy he was when they closed Bowes Island School because some Black children came there. And then he became a part. And it wasn't for, then he heard about Somerset Cricket Club and he feels that's what saved his life. That's what made him feel that he was a good person, that he was worthy. These are not elderly people. And they are describing us as a bunch of old people. Yeah, well, maybe we are. But the elephants that are old are wise. And we've seen a lot of this before. We are not going to tolerate this school being just cast aside. And let me add, I went to a meeting. The minister was present. He was not active in the meeting. And yes, I was allowed to express myself. It was a waste of my hour, and I'll tell you why. At the end of the meeting, they said, "Oh, well, what would you like to use West End for? A seniors facility, a gym, government offices, a school for I can't remember what." That told me then. They had made their decision and they were not moving. How dare you have me sit for an hour and then ask me what I would like the school used for? You didn't ask, maybe there's an idea for Somerset Primary. I knew then that this, for them, they're just building these temples for themselves, temples of vanity. Have I heard about teachers? What about teachers? That's
That's right.
what's made West End the place it
See,
is today.
yeah,
Not a
I
mention of
think,
teachers. I mean,
right.
I
One
think
of the,
that they deserve the money they're spending on these schools, they deserve to put into teachers.
one of
And
the
I'm not
things,
moving from that position.
yes, one of the things I'd like to say with respect to teaching and learning, the report, and believe me, I've read them all. I've gone over and over trying to find something that tells me I'm wrong. And I haven't succeeded yet. And I've read those reports back and front, 400 pages here, 152 pages there. One of the things, when we write reports so long, we're not expecting everybody to read them because, we're not going to get on a website and read that long. So these are some of the problems we have. There was no executive summary put in our mailboxes, but I get everything else in my mailbox. And so beforehand, we didn't know enough. But I want to say, with respect to teaching and learning, when we can really fix this situation, we can fix teaching and learning and all take place in the schools we have. And I will be the first to say there are some excellent teachers in our system. But I will also say there are some who really leave much to be desired. And we have to have the will to fix this situation. We have to either train these folks or let them go. But one of the ways I think we could help during my time, when I came out of school, we came out of the Berkeley looking like we look. We could be nurses or teachers. So you got the best and the brightest going into those fields. Today, with everything else open to us, people go to the more lucrative jobs. So the idea that we should pay teachers a better salary to come in would draw the best and the brightest. But we can get a consultant who comes out of, I don't know, not
New
much
Zealand,
experience. We can get a consultant for $126,000, but a teacher maybe about 70 some. I don't know the salaries now, but they're certainly not at 100 when they come in, not close. So these are the things. When we put importance on education, that's what we do. As happens in Finland, where they have all the master's degrees. They have to have masters, and they are paid handsomely.
Okay.
And much is made of the building here, but with this argument about building, hey, with that argument, a lot of our people shouldn't succeed. I've been to schools in Cuba. They're sending doctors all over the world. So the system is wonderful. You go into the classrooms, desks and chairs, and active teachers and active children. Many parts of Africa where our children do not have all of the fine things that we have throughout the world. They are doing well because they have loving, caring, good teaching. So I think that makes all the difference.
We're going to let each of you have a last word. I know that you guys have a lot more points to make, so maybe you want to pick up on some of them. I know um, solar panels was an issue, or building, or solar panels was something in favor of uh, West End because of the way the sun sets as compared to Somerset. But before we do that, I just want to apologize. I have a uniquely Bermudian problem in that I have a full chorus of tree frogs in the background. That's that's creating a bit of an echo on my end, and I haven't trained my cats yet to push them around to quiet them down. Um, but Larry, let's start with you. What if your parting point here? What do you want the community to know?
Well, first of all, brother, I want to mention that Sands Grammar wasn't open until 35 years off emancipation. So that tells you one thing right there. The other point is that if you were a Simmons, a Smith, a Brangman, Tankard, you all went to West End School, and it was all family. Most of those people were all family, especially the Brangmans, the Bascoms, and the Simmonses were all family. So back in the day, it was just one big family. And I just want the people from Somerset to know that, hey, we're not going to give up this fight until it's over. So just hang in there with us and support us whenever we need support. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity for being here.
Thank you,
Yes.
Larry. Ellen Kate, if you can go next.
Yes.
Your first word.
Okay. I will quickly say that we did hand a petition and questions to the minister on the 19th of July. We got no response, no answers. We sent another one on the 20 something of August, and we still haven't had written responses other than uh, last on Thursday, I found in my mailbox a note from the minister. And, the note did not answer the questions we asked. So that's very concerning to me. We had quite a few questions. None were answered. The first time one was answered. I find it disheartening that the time has not been taken to answer some of the many questions we have. And I think they're valid questions, but unfortunately, we can't sit face to face any longer. We're doing it from a distance because of COVID. So hopefully, the minister said in this last response I got, well, his decision is made. Um, we feel we is still enough to fight about. We feel that strongly about West End, and I want to dispel the argument that only old people. And thankfully, we've managed to get old. Some people don't get here, but and one of the things that we have experience, we have knowledge, we've lived this life. So we have something that we can pass on to the young people. And I just want to say that we are not alone. There are many young persons who are standing with us. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Cecily, in honor of your father's 33-year legacy at West End, you will have the last word today.
Well, I mean, it's 152 years, and I really feel the children. Let me tell you, the children of West End wear a jacket that says West End Warriors. They are warriors. The people who attended West End had to be warriors to survive the things they survived for an education. But foremost in the minds of everybody who came out of West End was that they were cared about and excellence was of importance. It didn't matter what type of job you did, you had to be excellent in it. I met a lady the other day whose parents had always worked in domestic type jobs, mother and father. And she said, do you know, there were three girls in our family. And my parents felt that we would go into service as well. But your father said these girls have the capability to do more. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing, but you're going to move a step higher. 3 of those young women became teachers. The sister, she had a job in a shop in Hamilton because she did not want to be a teacher, but her 2 other sisters became teachers. And for me, that's what West End is. It teaches children to aspire to greatness. And they've seen what's happened when you aspire. They've seen Clyde Best. They've seen um, Chief Inspector Naima Osgood.
Mhm.
Detective Sergeant Jason Smith. So when the children look at them, they think, I can join the police force, police service, or whatever they call it now, but I can aspire. Mr. Eugene Cox, Minister of Finance, Curtis Dickinson, Minister of Finance, all out of West End School. Caesar's Pharmacy, where did Fiona go to school? So all Somerset has been made great by these people who came out of West End School. And I just can't see it die. I really can't. And what offends me, that it's being killed by a government that we thought cared about us. This tells me they are not in it for caring about us. They're satisfying themselves. And in Somerset, that is not going to work. That's my say for the evening.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate seeing all 3 of your passion for West End and uh, giving us some of the background and the history of the school and the legacy that it stands for and the legacy it stood against, and some of the heartbreak it had to go through getting second-hand items when they were ordered for West End and were given
Yes.
to Somerset instead. So on behalf of Blue News,
Don, I'd like to say one other thing to you. I have to mention my grandson, Aaron Lugo Jr. He told me to mention that he's doing quite well, apparently. So I had to mention that. Aaron Lugo Jr.
yes,
Also,
Aaron did really well mowing the 50 lawns.
yeah.
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 So on behalf of Burn News and all the viewers that we had tonight, and I've been told the numbers are really high, so hopefully this will have gotten the word out to people and get them on your side. We want to thank Larry Hunt,
Thank
Helen
you.
Kate Horton, and Cecily. Did I say that right? Yes, Cecily
It
Simmons.
doesn't matter. I know who you mean.
Cecily. I butchered that, I think, 2 or 3 times tonight. But
Yes. Well, thank you for having us, Don. We really appreciate it.
And as always, on behalf of Burn News and especially tonight, the tree frogs in my background, we wish you a beautiful evening.